Between the 5th and 15th centuries, while the Catholic Church preached absolute chastity from the pulpits, in Europe's private chambers flourished intimate traditions as elaborate as they were disturbing practices that blended superstition, primitive medicine, and dynastic obsessions into combinations that challenge our modern understanding. 7 of these traditions, documented in ecclesiastical manuscripts, medical treatises, and courtly chronicles, reveal how human desire found ways to express itself, even under the weight of the most severe religious repression in Western history. What you are about to discover is not just a collection of forgotten historical curiosities, but practices that shape dynasties, influence politics, and determine the fate of entire kingdoms. First practice, the night test ritual in 12th century France. Before any aristocratic marriage could be consummated, the bride had to undergo what chroniclers called the examen nocturnum, a ritual in which official court witnesses remained in the nuptial chamber to verify the legitimacy of the union. Marguerite of Provence, future Queen of France, described in personal letters how 3 court ladies stayed present during her first night with King Louis IX in 1234. They observed, took notes, and later gave formal testimony on the new queen's physical suitability. This was not an isolated case. Documents from the French National Archives reveal that between 1180 and 1350, at least 4 to 7 European royal marriages included some form of official intimate supervision. The practice had a clear political purpose: to ensure the dynastic lineage could not be questioned later. The ritual was so institutionalized that there were specific manuals for the witnesses, detailing what to observe, how to document it, and when to intervene if something inappropriate occurred. Second practice, the Lectus Benedictus ceremony in the Holy Roman Empire. Between the 9th and 14th centuries, a tradition developed in which clergy members performed elaborate blessings over the marriage bed before consummation. What began as a simple religious ritual evolved into something deeply invasive. Documents from the Abbey of St. Gallen, dated 1156, describe how Abbot Ulrich of Eppenstein created the Ordo Benedictionis Thalami, a 43-step protocol that included the sprinkling of holy water on specific parts of the newlyweds' bodies. While they remained completely naked, the ceremony lasted between 2 and 4 hours. The chronicler Herman of Reichenau recorded that during the wedding of Henry IV and Bertha of Savoy in 1066, 7 bishops participated in the blessing, each responsible for a specific sacred body region. The ritual reached its peak of complexity in the 13th century, when it began to include the recitation of specific psalms at different moments of the union, with the clergy determining the appropriate duration and intensity for each phase. This practice was only officially banned by Pope Innocent IV in 1254, following growing protests from nobles, who considered the clerical interference excessively intrusive. Third practice, the fertility trial in medieval England, between 1066 and 1485. A unique judicial system developed in which noble couples were subjected to public evaluations of reproductive compatibility before receiving marital approval from the court. Records from the Tower of London document that during the reign of Edward III, the Curia Fertilitatis was established, a specialized court composed of royal physicians, experienced midwives, and royal advisors. This court had the authority to physically examine future spouses and determine their procreative suitability. Lady Eleanor de Montfort, in 1238, underwent an examination that lasted 3 consecutive days at Windsor Castle. Documents preserved in the British National Archives reveal that she was evaluated by 5 different specialists, each responsible for verifying specific aspects of her dynastic capacity. The process included physical endurance tests, assessment of hereditary traits, and compatibility analysis based on the era's medical theories regarding bodily humors. Couples who failed the trial were prohibited from marrying within the kingdom. The practice became so institutionalized that detailed manuals were created for the examiners, specifying evaluation techniques and approval criteria that would today be considered deeply invasive. Fourth practice, the Sanguis Virginitatis ritual in the Iberian kingdoms between the 11th and 15th centuries, a ceremony developed in which the bride's purity was not merely proven on the wedding night. The tradition required that physical evidence be preserved and publicly displayed for 3 consecutive days. The Chronicles of Alfonso X the Wise document how in 1260, during the wedding of his daughter Beatrice to Afonso III of Portugal, the nuptial sheets were displayed in the courtyard of the Alcazar of Seville. Hundreds of courtiers, ambassadors, and members of the clergy paraded by to attest to the legitimacy of the union. But the practice evolved beyond simple exhibition. Documents from the Simancas archive reveal that in the 14th century, an official position was created, the Custos Pudicitia, responsible for preserving and authenticating such evidence. Using techniques we would now consider primitive forensics, the chronicler Pedro López de Ayala recorded that during the wedding of Joanna of Castile in 1375, the ceremony included the participation of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim physicians, each group applying its own verification methods to ensure absolute authenticity. This tradition gave rise to a true science of verification with specialized treatises and international protocols that influence matrimonial practices throughout the Mediterranean regions of Europe. Fifth practice, the ceremonial concubitus interruptus tradition in the Duchy of Burgundy. Between the 12th and 15th centuries, a matrimonial practice developed in which consummation of marriage was deliberately interrupted at specific moments for the performance of spiritual purification rituals. The annals of Cluny document that during the wedding of Philip the Good and Isabella of Portugal in 1430, the intimate ceremony was paused 7 different times to allow for specific prayers, burning of sacred incense, and the application of blessed oils on certain body parts as prescribed by local ecclesiastical tradition. This practice originated from the belief that moments of peak intimacy provided unique opportunities for divine intervention in conception. Manuscripts from the Byzantine library revealed detailed protocols in which each interruption had a specific duration, purpose, and ritual. The chronicler Georges Chastelain recorded that by the 15th century, the tradition had become so elaborate that there were masters of nuptial ceremony, specialists, who guided couples on the exact timing of the pauses and the appropriate rituals for each moment. Preserved documents show that some ceremonies lasted the entire night, with up to 15 different interruptions, each accompanied by chants, biblical readings, and the application of elements considered sacred by the standards of the time. Sixth practice, the testimonium corporis in the German states of the 13th century, a tradition developed in which newlyweds were required to provide a bodily testimony of their union to a council of community elders, who would meticulously document every aspect of the experience. For use in future marriages, the Nuremberg records of 1287 describe how Marguerite von Hohenstaufen and her husband Heinrich were subjected to separate interrogations for 5 consecutive days after their wedding night. Each spouse had to report, with the medical precision of the time, all aspects of their intimate experience. These testimonies were transcribed by official scribes and archived in the Bibliotheca Matrimonialis, a collection of testimonies that served as an educational guide for future noble generations. Documents from the Frankfurt Municipal Archive reveal more than 200 of these preserved records. The practice evolved to include comparisons between different marriages, compatibility, analysis based on medieval medical theories, and specific recommendations for couples facing harmonization difficulties. There were even specialists, the Magistri Consensus, who interpreted these testimonies and provided guidance. The chronicler Conrad von Wurzburg documented that by 1315, this tradition had spread throughout the Holy Roman Empire, creating a true empirical science of matrimonial relations that influenced conjugal practices for generations. Seventh practice, the Benedictio Seminis ritual in the medieval Kingdom of Hungary. Between the 12th and 14th centuries, the most complex of all intimate traditions emerged, the ceremony of blessing the male vital essence prior to the conception of dynastic heirs. The codices of Buddha, dated 1235, document how during the reign of Bela IV, a protocol was established in which Hungarian kings underwent a 3-month preparation ritual before attempting to conceive an heir. This process included specific diets, daily prayers, and the active involvement of specialized Benedictine monks. The chronicler Simon of Keza recorded that in 1279, King Ladislaus underwent a ritual in which his procreative essence was collected weekly and examined by a commission of doctors, alchemists, and clergy to determine the ideal moment for royal conception. Manuscripts preserved in the Hungarian National Archives reveal that there were specific alchemical formulas to purify and enhance this essence, including the addition of dissolved gold, rare herbs from the Carpathians, and holy water from designated monasteries. The tradition became so sophisticated that the role of Custos Vitalis Regalius was created, a royal court official responsible exclusively for supervising these rituals and keeping detailed records of their effectiveness in producing healthy heirs. These 7 practices, however bizarre they may seem today, had monumental political consequences in the shaping of medieval Europe. They were not merely bedroom curiosities. They were instruments of power that determined dynastic successions, international alliances, and even the course of wars. The French Night Test directly influenced the legitimacy of at least 16 European kings between 1200 and 1400, when Joan of Navarre failed the ritual in 1284. It triggered a succession crisis that led to the 100 Years' War, a conflict that devastated Europe for over a century. The German Lectus Benedictus created such deep dependency between nobility and clergy that when Pope Innocent IV banned it in 1254, more than 40 noble marriages were retroactively annulled, redistributing territories equivalent in size to modern-day Belgium. The English fertility trial documented reproductive failures that changed history. Lady Margaret Beaufort was rejected 3 times before finally conceiving Henry VII, founder of the Tudor dynasty. Without that medieval medical persistence, England would never have known Shakespeare, who was born under Tudor patronage. These traditions created an intimate bureaucracy that employed thousands of people: physicians, scribes, officials, witnesses, masters of ceremony, turning intimacy into a thriving medieval industry that mobilized resources equivalent to the military budgets of the time.